everyone, Marcus here from the Ash and Fly Shop. We're back at the Vise. Steelhead are spawning, so we're tying trout flies. It's mid-April. Some trout fishing going on right now. There will be a whole lot more in May, a little bit more to do in June, all summer long. So, for folks who like to streamer fish for trout, this is what we're going to be tying. It's a jigged Sculpin pattern. Could be used on a trout spay rod, single hander, doesn't matter. But we just got these Jig Shanks from Aquaflies in the shop. They're a newer material, and we're going to start playing around with them. So let's pull one out. These are the 25mm version. There is a little bit longer version as well. I'm going to throw it in the vise. They're a 60-degree bend at the eye. Bunch of different uses for a jig hook, but the nice thing, you know, to get a jigged streamer this big, if you were going to use a 60 or 90-degree jig hook, you'd end up having this huge gape on there and a lot of torque on the fish when you're fighting them. So doing the trailer design on a jig shank like we do with our steelhead flies is a good thing for the fish. So I'm going to start up near the eye. This is 50 denier gel spun in black from Vise, which goes with me everywhere I'm tying a fly and pretty much lives on my bobbin. So I've got an ultra rig with a size 6 SSW hook off the back. I just gauge that hook size based on the fish that you're targeting. For this size of fly, I think a size 6 or 4 hook is probably the most appropriate. But it just depends on the fish that you're targeting, how you size that hook. So I'm going to tie this guy in. If you are confused what the Ultra Rig is, we did a whole video about them. Unlike my intruder flies where I tie with the hook point up, I did tie this one hook point down, and I do think that is a good idea when we've got rabbit coming over the top of the fly like we'll have in this one. So as I'm wrapping, you can see I'm just trying to keep these strands of material along the top of the shank as I wrap up here, just right on top. And I'll pull them back. For my eyes on the fly, I've got the intruder eyes. This is the 1/8 version in olive. You know, in steelhead flies, it seems like it's funny because we're using bigger rods, but often using less weight in our flies than trout fishing. This is a version of this fly that I tied with a painted lead eye on here. That's pretty common in a lot of trout streamers. We even have little tungsten eyes for trout streamers, and I think there's a lot of situations with trout where if you're fishing, you know, broken water behind a boulder or something, or, you know, undercut banks, you really want that fly to pierce through the water quickly. So it gives you the opportunity to fish some more weight than we do in steelhead. You know, when you're swinging flies for steelhead, you got these big broad runs. That fly has time to get down and stay down at a level. But trout fishing, oftentimes, we're trying to pierce through the water column and get right into the strike zone right when that fly hits the water. So you can definitely use a bigger eye than this 1/8 version that I've got if you want more weight. Or you could put some lead-free wire in the body as well if you were really trying to get this thing down there. So I'm just kind of figurating through those eyes to tie them on, and then I'll split this fire line, and I'll do it so you can see it there, but I wrap them over the eyes, and then when I come back, I'll flip the vise so you can see. I'll wrap them, try and keep them just along what will be the bottom of the shank as much as I can. I think that 180-degree flip And if you get a post in there like your eyes, it's just a really stable, secure way to keep this ultra rig set up in there. So I'll wrap those all the way to the back of the shank. And then before those eyes are totally locked in there, I'm going to put a little Zappa gap through the body and around those eyes. Ooh, that was a little bit more than I wanted. But that's going to help me secure everything totally in place. So, this fly, the way I'm doing it now, you could do it where you've just got a shorter shank or just kind of rabbit hanging off of there, and I'm sure it would fish great, but the way I'm doing it in this particular pattern, it's got a little bit more going on in the fly, just to give it some bulk and profile in the water. So the way we do that on this one is a little Marabou off the tail. This is the Fish Hunter Spay Marabou that we brought in, just in an olive color. Really nice long stems on this stuff. I'm going to peel away just the base of this feather, but we are going to use, you know, when I'm spinning or wrapping Marabou around the shank for steelhead flies, I'm often looking in this top portion of the feather, just that really thin stem, those longer, wispier fibers. In my trout flies, I'm happy to use this stuff at the base. So I'll take it off there, measure it roughly the length of the shank. A big thing that the Marabou does for me in this pattern is it covers up that black tubing. Covers up that black tubing in the back, which is nice. You know, I don't think the fish is gonna mind, but if I can cover it up with some Marabou, get something that moves a little bit more naturally hanging off the back of the fly, I think that's a good thing. So I've got a little tailing clump of Marabou on the top, flip my vise 180, and I'll do a matching amount of Marabou on the underside of the fly. Just kind of make sure it's clean. So after I've got that Marabou tied in, I'm going to tie in what will be our rib for the fly, which is some small ultra wire and gold. You could definitely use any color you want here. It's going to get hidden, and you could go down to an extra small size if you wanted as well. So I'm going to clip off this wire, flip my vise to give me a nice clean surface to tie it in. Tie it through the body, kind of hang it in my material clip. The body on this fly is just going to be a ice dub, which you can use. I'm using peacock black today. You can use a whole bunch of different colors. Anything olive, black, peacock, brown, pheasant tail, whole bunch of different stuff. Doesn't particularly matter what we dub this body with. But before I get it in my loop, I'm gonna get it more or less in a straight line. Open up my dubbing loop, lay it in there, and then give that dubbing spinner a good spin. And just let it go. All right, then I'm gonna pick it out. get some of those trapped fibers out of there. I'll kind of hold my marabou tail back a little bit. Just make sure I'm not trapping those fibers. I'll wrap this guy forward. I just want to make sure to leave some space right behind these eyes, because I'm going to fill that space up a little bit. So I've got my body dubbed. I will pick it out right now. Give myself a nice clean working area for the head. Then I'm going to tie in a little hackle for the body. This is just a barred black and olive saddle hackle. The MFC barred hackles would probably be the closest that we have to those guys right there. So I just picked a feather here. I'm going to clip away a lot of the fuzzy stuff, peel it back until I'm just left with the larger, more webbier stuff at the back of there, and that's what I'm going to use. Tie it in, clip it off. I'm going to grab it by the tip top. Just kind of fills out the body in this fly. Pretty much, if you didn't look at the eyes, with the tail and the body, you've just got your standard woolly bugger right there. Just come through, get a couple good thread wraps on my wire, then clip it off at the back end of my scissors. I'll grab the tip of this feather from the back and trim it as close to the body as I can. All right. Pretty much just a woolly bugger now. It's gonna start to look quite a bit different. So on top of the body, I'm gonna get a little flash coming through the fly. This is the UV polar chenille in the copper. And it's not gonna take much of this stuff. So I'm gonna tie this in. Probably just get about a wrap or two of this in here. Oh, it came apart. Just one wrap. Fold those fibers back. Give myself a clean workspace for the head. These fibers, there's different, some of them are really crinkly and some of them are straight. So if something gets trapped down as you're tying them in, you can just free those fibers either with your scissors or a bodkin, but that's just going to give a little flash, a little sparkle through the body. And then I like dangly things hanging off of trout streamers. So I'm going to use these micro silicone legs. These are the barred pumpkin. They're probably in every trout streamer that I tie. And I'm just going to grab two of them, rip them off of there. flip the vise so you guys can see what I'm doing, but I always tie one in on my near side, grab those legs, fold it over, kind of just fold them to the far side and tie them off. And then I'll just clip them to length. I might trim them shorter later, but how they are right now is just fine. Just kind of let them dangle. Maybe get them so they're a similar length on both sides. And then for the rabbit in this fly, I've got the black barred olive with black, and you could also use the micro pulsator strip, which would probably help you on a trout spay if you had the micro pulsator. Just gonna pick up less water, be a little bit less rabbit. But for this fly, I'm gonna use this barred rabbit strip, which is a little bit bigger in length. I'll find the length I'm looking for just by hanging it on the fly. You will find sometimes these rabbit hides, they get kind of twisty. So while I'm working with them, I might just find where it's straightening out in here and use those pieces. So it seems like there's a pretty straight piece right there. So I'm gonna grab this guy, cut it off from both ends. It's still kind of twisty. So I want this rabbit to hang past the point of the hook. So I'm just going to clip it one more time. And then when I tie in, I like to peel just a little bit so there's just a spare bit of hide showing off of there. And I'll tie it in right on top of the shank like that and get some nice, good, hard thread wraps over it. Just so it's locked down and it ain't going anywhere. All right, and on the head of this fly, I've got a package of olive Sculpin wool. You could use ram's wool and Sculpin wool. Comes in some different formats. You'll find it on the hide or you'll just find it loose like this. It all works. I'm just gonna cut some of this off of here. And that's what we're gonna be working with. So when you're doing a wool head I'll use 3 sections that are very much the same. They're just about 1 inch long, and I'll just clip them off, and 3 of those can be the exact same length, same amount of material, just, you know, about 1 inch long and just a puff of material. The top, there is going to be 1 section of it where you need to be a little bit more discerning. And I do find the stuff on the hide is a little bit easier to work with for this. But it just has to do with getting the shape of this head to not be really blocky. And you want to find, and you can shape it yourself, but you want to find some material that's got some taper to it. So it's not just, you know, a straight block. Like, I like to have one that's got a little bit of taper where the lengths of it come off at different ends, and you'll see why when I tie it in. But for the first piece of wool that we're gonna use, I'll just pinch it in my finger like this, fold it over the thread, so it's just folded in half, and just bring it up to the bottom of the shank. And really, that's when it's nice to have a gel spun thread, because you want to have quite a bit of tension when you tie that stuff in so that it doesn't go anywhere. And this is the one where I really like to have something that's a little bit more tapered, because this back part of the head is going to, I'm going to keep some of that wool in there, and it's going to help me form what's going to look like a Sculpin profile in the fly. So I've got 2 clumps, one on top, one on bottom, tied in there. And I'm going to get 2 more in here. So do, oh, bad fold. Try and fold it right on the middle point. And really pull on it after you lock it in. Need one more thread wrap on that guy. But wool is really fun stuff to work with. It soaks up water, but it holds its shape, so it's kind of somewhere in between rabbit and deer hair. Doesn't hold its shape as well as deer hair, I don't think, but doesn't soak up water like rabbit, so it's kind of a nice middle ground. I'm just going to pull all that back, clear some space at the eye. Looks a little gnarly. And get a nice thread head at the top of the fly here. And then I'll do a couple whip finishes. It's nice to, on the jig shank, you can do a little thread head. I'll pull back this wool so you can see where I'm doing the head. I've found that flipping the vise over and doing that thread head just kind of right on that angle of the shank is a nice way to build up a little bit of thread. And I just feel, you know, a lot of flies of mine, whether they're muddlers or different things, or deer hair bodied or deer hair head streamers, do not have any type of glue securing the thread, just because of the way it works when you lock everything down. But I do feel better about the longevity of the fly if I can get a little head cement in there, and working on that angled part of the jig shank just helps build up a little thread head and makes me feel better about the longevity of the fly. All right, that's a really ugly fly. We're done here. No, I'm just kidding. We're not done. We're gonna give this thing a haircut. So, because I use my scissors in my left hand, I'm gonna flip the vise around. And I'm gonna pull the legs out of the way so I'm not clipping my legs. I'm gonna get in there with this wool and cut a really flat bottom out of it. Now, the cool thing about wool is you can shape this head however you want. If you want a really big head that really pushes a lot of water, you could kind of leave it pretty rough like this. I do like to kind of clear some room so that that body that I spent some time doing can show through the fly. So I'll just get a nice clean cut on the bottom there. And I like to keep everything proportional. Like, I don't want a huge fat head on a shorter fly. So a good rule of thumb for me is, you know, basing the size of the head a little bit on the size of the eye that you tie in there. So you want to be able to see that eye a little bit. And to see it, that head is just going to get smaller and smaller around it. That's getting close. I'm going to pull it out of the vise and probably come in for a little bit more detailed work. So I'll get my ultra rig set up on the back here. We got, you know, a large head on there. It's going to push some water, but keep its shape. So it's really going to keep that Sculpin profile. The eyes on the bottom, you know, with that jigging motion. I just think this pattern, I got a place I'm probably going to test it out either this weekend or next weekend, but I just think it's a pattern that we'll be able to get them with. So that's the first Sculpin that I've tied up on the Jig Shanks from Aquaflies. I'm sure there will be a few more things coming down the pipe. Thank you very much for tuning in.